Well, hello and welcome to another Diving Deeper from Longfleet Baptist Church. I'm Ken, I'm the minister here, and again I'm joined by Janet, our church secretary.
Morning.
So if you do want to listen to the sermon that's associated with this conversation, then you can go onto our website, go onto the Sunday services section, and you'll find the recordings of all the sermons. So you might want to listen to the sermon that has inspired this conversation. We are working through a series on the Holy Spirit at the moment, and this is the second in our conversations on the Holy Spirit, which I've entitled The Holy Spirit Broods. The Holy Spirit Broods. And so I'm going to read from Genesis chapter 1, verses 1 and 2, and we'll get into our discussion. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. That hovering word can be translated in several different ways. It's the Hebrew word rakav, and it can mean brood or hover, or even sort of flutter or vibrate. So, Janet, what do we think that the word brood means? And then why did different translators translate it in different ways? Do those words relate to each other, or what do we think?
I think they do. The dictionary defines it in two different ways, because it talks about the brooding that a bird or a parent does over its young, but also it talks about meditating and moodily kind of hovering over, considering stuff. So I think there's two aspects of that in what God's saying in the Bible about this. So for me, fluttering is all about movement and being active, whereas hovering is a bit more protective and still. You know, if you watch a bird in the sky hovering, it's barely moving at all. So I guess there's two aspects to God's spirit brooding over us. Sometimes he's more active, and sometimes he's more just keeping an eye on us as we're going about our daily lives.
Yeah, we spoke a bit earlier about how the Spirit brooding over that pre-creation, that could be the contemplative, meditative sort of broodiness. You know, God's thinking, what am I going to do next? How am I going to manifest my love in creation? And it could also be that moving, that stimulating movement, hovering. And I think quite often the Bible writers use those words with multiple meanings. There are multiple layers to that meaning. We certainly don't think God is a static God. He's a dynamic, moving God, isn't he? And similarly, the same word rakav is used in Deuteronomy 32, 11 and 12. So I'll read that. Like an eagle that stirs up its nest and hovers over its young, that spreads its wings to catch them and carries them on its pinions, the Lord alone led him. No foreign god was with him. So that word rakav is there again, translated as hover. The eagle hovers over its young. So is that, does that word rakav, hover, have the same sense as it does in Genesis 1, do you think, or is it a slightly different meaning?
I think probably a bit different in the context that, the image that Moses is using here. He is talking about a bird like hovering more than just the spirit brooding as in creation. And I do see those two things in that passage there, that the bird looking after its young in the nest when they're newly hatched, but then wanting to encourage their baby chicks to get out of the nest and fly for themselves, but still being there to protect them. And that's what Moses is saying to God's people in Deuteronomy. God's been doing for them over the years, I think.
Yes, yeah. When I was reading some commentaries about this, one of them was saying that the eagle, the mother eagle, hovers over the nest, and the airflow from her wings stimulates the baby's wings. So she's yes, she's providing that protective hovering, but she's also trying to stimulate them to fly, to these fledglings that are just learning to fly. So it is that sort of dual, those two things are happening with that hovering. It is that protective watching over, but it's also, come on, you've got to get out of the nest, leave your comfort zone and live. And I think that's when we talk about the Spirit of God and his ministry, there is that dual role of protection, but also, you know, giving us a bit of a kick sometimes when we need it. Come on, you need to stop feeling sorry for yourself, stop being comfortable in the nest, and let's go. Let's get on with it. And I really like this Deuteronomy passage, although it's very short. The idea that that God is there, hovering above us all the time, like an eagle, but it is stirring up, like an eagle that stirs up its nest. It's stirring us up. Lots of sort of bird imagery in my sermon on Sunday, and I picked that deliberately. And one of the other ones was from Psalm 9. So Janet's going to read Psalm 91. Psalm 91.
Verses 1 to 4. Whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. Surely He will save you from the fowler's snare and from the deadly pestilence. He will cover you with His feathers, and under His wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness will be your shield and rampart.
And so a bit of a personal question, I suppose. Have you experienced that protection? And what is God saying to us in this psalm? And have you experienced that for yourself?
I think so, in lots of occasions. But one thing that I was particularly thinking about when I was looking at the questions was when the COVID pandemic struck, and we saw the images on the television of people in hospital really ill and suffering, and as somebody who had several of the health conditions that were being mentioned as being high risk, I was quite concerned about it and quite worried and a bit fearful. And I remember going to the supermarket the first week that everybody was queuing outside for their shopping, and I sat in the car literally frozen with, like, I don't know if I can get out of the car. And I heard God say to me, don't be afraid of the stuff that they're afraid of, because I'm with you. And I did get out and went off and did my shopping, and nothing terrible happened to me. And I just, there have been lots of examples of that during my life where, things have been a bit scary and I've had to go into operations in hospital and so on. And yet I know that God's been there with me throughout that experience.
I really like something you said there, that God said you don't be afraid of the stuff that they're scared of. And that kind of that's a very biblical thing. And Jesus says don't be afraid of the sort of physical things. And I think that's a really key thing for Christians. Don't be afraid of what the world's afraid of, because actually although we live in the world, we're also heavenly subjects of the heavenly kingdom. My wife and I went through a particularly difficult time some years ago with our daughter when she was very young. She was very ill, and I kept coming back to this psalm. It wasn't one I was particularly familiar with, and I kept coming back to it as a promise that everything was going to be all right. And I had to wrestle with that a little bit, because you think, well, what if everything's not all right? What if I've taken this as a promise from God and it's not all right in the end? And actually it was, and you've seen her, she's a little chunky little 9-year-old charging about the place now, and she was absolutely fine. And I was able to then realise that this was a promise from God. But sometimes we have to kind of, I think, actually God's promises for the long term. It might be it's going to be all right in the end. Doesn't mean it's going to be all right in the here and now.
And I think that in the instance of me sat in that car, God wasn't saying to me, or it wasn't guaranteeing me that I was not going to get COVID,
Yeah.
or that I was not going to get ill. What it was saying to me was, don't be afraid of any of those things,
Yeah.
because you know where you're going in the end.
Yeah.
And I had that hope that if I did get very sick and died, God was, I was going to be with me through that, and I was going to heaven.
Yeah.
So I didn't have to worry about the things that other people might worry about in that situation.
Yeah. There's a television series, I think it might be called Klondike, and it takes place in the gold rush in North America, and an illness sweeps through the town, and they get all the very ill people into the bar, and the priest, the minister, he goes to help them, and there's no antibiotics, there's no face masks or anything like that, and the bad guy says, "Oh, do you think your God's going to save you?" And the minister says, "My God has already saved me." And that is the kind of, he's there serving, he's putting himself at physical risk, but he knows that ultimately he's saved and everything's going to be all right. Interestingly, this psalm is one of the passages that the Satan deliberately tries to mess with Jesus when Jesus is being tempted. He will command his angels concerning you to guide you in all your ways.
Yes.
So Satan knows this and tries to trip Jesus up with it. We also thought about on Sunday, back to Genesis 1, this word ruach, which is often translated as Holy Spirit, but can also mean wind or breath. And I was talking about a baby. When a baby needs comforting and you hold it close to you, and it starts sensing your breathing and your heart rate, and it settles it down. And so how do we synchronize ourselves with God's breath? If the Holy Spirit is in a way the breath of God, how do we synchronize ourselves with God's breathing, with his heart rate?
Well, when I was thinking about what you said on Sunday, I was thinking, I don't really know the answer to that question. But actually, my daily devotions that I use morning and evening kind of gave me a clue yesterday, because in both of them, it encourages you to slow your breathing, to try and empty your mind of all the other stuff that's been concerning you, to concentrate on the presence of God. And that's really what you're doing in trying to synchronize yourself with the Holy Spirit, is to try and put yourself in tune with God's Spirit that's inside you. And you saying about the baby's heartbeat synchronizes with you, and that's it's a physical thing in this devotion, that you slow your breathing consciously to try and slow down and relax and then concentrate on God. And both morning and evening as part of that routine, really, to lead you into devotions. And I think that's quite a helpful thing to do. It's not something that until I started these devotions I found easy to do.
No.
Yes,
I mean we are physical beings, and so often we think when we're trying to be spiritual, we're reading the Bible and we're praying, but we forget that physical element. We need to look after ourselves physically. Take a deep breath and calm ourselves down and tune in with God. I love being outside in nature, not necessarily sort of the wonder of nature that some Christians experience, like all the amazing rainbows and birds and things, but I just like being out and away from it all, and that's where I can feel God's presence. That's where he quite often ministers to me if I'm out for a walk or a bike ride or whatever. That's where, I say semi-jokingly, you wouldn't get a Sunday sermon if I didn't go out for a long dog walk a couple of times a week, because that's where that reflectiveness happens. It's where I'm able to be calm, away from all the hustle and bustle. And I think many people that have been Christians for a while, they know what it is that is helpful for them to stay in step with the Holy Spirit, but they just don't practice it anymore. It's really easy for me with 5 children and a church and a working wife to say, I haven't got time for a decent walk this week. And actually, we do need to sometimes find that time. Jesus was really disciplined in separating himself away from. He'd spend time in the marketplace with everyone. He'd spend time with his close 12 or even his closest 3, but then he'd also spend time completely by himself away, and that's so precious to us that we have the discipline to do that. Not always easy if you've got children and work and family and all the rest of it. But that ruach, that breath. So there we go. We've thought a bit about the spirit, the broodiness of the spirit, and how he hovers over us, but also stimulates us to movement. And we thought a bit about his protection over us, and also that breath, how we stay in tune with him, with his breathing. So like I say, please do have a look at our website. We've got sermons on there. We've got details of our Bible studies. If you wanted to join us as we look at a bit more deeply into this ministry of the Holy Spirit, we have a Bible study on Monday here at the church in person, and we have one on Wednesday by Zoom. So we were chatting yesterday, and we said it would be great to have people join us on the Zoom. It doesn't matter whether you come to our church, whether you're part of our church, whether you're in Poole or not. If you're interested, have a look on our website and join us on Wednesday nights for our Zoom Bible study. It's called Wednesday Night In. So yeah, we do hope and pray as ever that you would feel the ministry of the Holy Spirit in your life, that you would feel him brooding over you like that eagle brooding over her fledglings, and that you would find ways to walk in tune with the Spirit, to synchronise your breathing